All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. We really are about to unlock some secrets today using NPS or Net Promoter Score. So a few additional housekeeping items. This webinar, as you just heard, is being recorded. We're going to send a copy out afterwards, along with a copy of the report that we'll be discussing today. So absolutely everything we discussed throughout this webinar will be headed to your email shortly after. Please use the chat to introduce yourself if you'd like, or ask any questions, share comments throughout the webinar. We'll be watching, and we're just really excited to have this conversation with all of you today. So with that, it is my pleasure to hand it over to the Chief Customer Officer at K-12 Insight, Krista Coleman.
Hi, all. Thank you and welcome. Thanks, Isabella, for the introduction. First and foremost, thank all of you for being here today. It's lunchtime for some of you, right? And I know how busy your calendars must be, and lunch is a precious time where you typically can sit and enjoy yourself. So I'm hoping we make this so engaging that you are so happy that you're spending the time with us. We are really grateful and glad you're here. As Isabella said, I'm Krista Coleman. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at K-12 Insight. And joining me to take you into a really deep dive into the data that we collected when we did this survey is my colleague, Dr. Kate Shoulders. Kate is Senior Director of Research here at K-12 Insight. Thanks for being here, Kate.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. For those of you joining us for the first time, just a little history. In August of last year, K-12 Insight released an inaugural report. And we hosted a webinar to launch kind of a quarterly report series to kind of keep telling our audience about our findings. We explored how often parents really did reach out to school districts. And then we also focused on how satisfied parents and families were with those interactions. So you're joining us today as we continue this conversation about the satisfaction that your parents and families have with interactions with your school district. Now, we didn't survey your exact parents, so just know that this is a random survey. We'll get into a little bit more with Kate, but for those of you who have followed these conversations, or if you've been in a previous webinar, you'll remember we discussed not only the parent interactions, but we discussed something called a Net Promoter Score, or NPS. So don't hang up and don't run away and don't click me off, because you're like, I don't even know what this is. We're going to take you through that. It is a game changer for the way we measure parent satisfaction going forward. And so I just want you to know that it is going to be 40 minutes, not an hour, of really what that is and how it pertains to our parent everyday interaction at our school district. So as promised, today we're going to dive into those findings from the November report. We're going to dig deeper into how the parents and families perceive those interactions, but also with using NPS. We're also going to share some insights into the behaviors of families that are thinking about leaving your district or other districts nationally for other educational options. Okay, so our goal today is you walk away from your lunchtime knowing more about how to understand your customers through NPS, how to measure your perceptions, and strategies for bringing NPS back to your district if you choose. Got it? Thumbs up. Okay, let's dive in. School districts with 10,000 students or more can easily receive more than 26,000 inbound inquiries in a school. So based on the size of your school district, your number of interactions may be a little different than that. But that still turns out to be a lot of interactions to keep track of on a daily basis. So we're going to kick this off by hearing from you. In the chat, share an example of a recent interaction with a family. It can be positive or negative. I'll give you a few examples if you can't think of anything off the bat, like, did a parent recently reach out to you about the school calendars, complaining or happy with them or wanting them to change? Or did you help navigate a parent through a tough situation? Maybe they were frustrated about something that happened to their child in their classroom or on the bus or on the playground. Share a couple of those interactions with us. We have a shy group here.
So I'll go.
Okay.
I work in transportation, and I had a parent call regarding the pickup. Apparently, we are either arriving too soon to their stop, or we are always late to their stop. And in this particular case, the driver who was covering the run arrived on time and left on time. So we were able to resolve the concerns the following day, but that was something that I dealt with within the past week.
Love that. And I love that you added something that was so important, because we haven't even started and gotten into the data, that how quickly you were able to respond to them, right? You know, sometimes we can't get to them right when they call, as you know, especially in transportation. I actually sat and witnessed and answered a call center just so I could learn how all things are done. We can't get back to them right away. But the fact that you got back to them the next day to get resolved, did the customer seem satisfied at the end?
Yeah, the customer was very understanding, but he seemed, well, I guess I'll find out next week once we get through this week. And we're we just need to be consistent. I know that's the key, because they have schedules just like we do. So I'll find out next week.
Good. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, well, we'll use this example to kind of take us into our next slide, because the perception of your school district really is shaped by the experiences that your families have in your school district. I'll say that one more time. The perception of your school district is shaped by the experiences that your families have in your school district. So with so many educational options today, there's so much at stake for you, right? Representing your school district. And the perception of the school district is really the cornerstone of how families will process every interaction with you. That is why we just really emphasize how important it is to pay close attention to the experiences your family is having. For those of you on the call that have Let's Talk, it's very simple, because you get to see every interaction, and just like Uber, you get to see how they rate them, and you know your customers' service scores. But if you don't have a tool like that that monitors and measures that for you, so you can have a dashboard to watch that on a daily basis, you have to kind of, you have to basically manage it exactly like our friend just shared with us, that, we heard their concern, we got back to them, and still that follow-up next week is going to be good, but the consistency is so important. And, as school districts, we've mastered that outbound communication. We're really, really good at that. We send out reminds, right? We get our newsletters out from our local schools. We send newsletters out. We have, our superintendents are speaking. We're getting on YouTube. We even got teachers on TikToks, right? So we've mastered that outbound, and especially those lovely recorded messages we all get that ring at the same time in everybody's houses, right? All that's really good. But let's keep it real. For most districts, the inbound communication is not that clean, right? And if you look at the screen, you'll see that it really is a tangled web. Many of our districts find out how their families really feel and what they're really experiencing through things like emails, phone calls, or social media, which I know you guys don't even want me to bring that up right now. But to keep it really real, our staff members are overwhelmed too. They're handling all those incoming calls. I mean, transportation getting hit at the worst. The engagement centers are getting hit hard too. In the morning, it's crazy with everybody who's taking attendance. So we know that handling those inbound inquiries are a bit of a challenge, not to mention you have all these inquiries coming from everywhere, every day. It's hard to know what's the most important, right? Amongst all that feedback that you're receiving, what do you need to address right away? You need an easy way to make it make sense, right? All that information, you need a really comprehensive way to make it make sense. And additionally, and more importantly, with so many educational options we're fighting against, when we don't get back to them in time, right? Everybody threatens they're going to leave. So it's incumbent on the district leaders to help make families feel secure that public schools still is the greatest choice. So how do we start measuring all these perceptions, right? If you don't have a software that measures every day, this is a really good way that you could jump in and immediately add something to add impact, right? Your net promoter score. That's truly your starting point. NPS helps your district cut through the noise by just giving you a clear measurement of your family's perceptions about your district. This way you can better understand not only how they feel, but what they're really saying about your district. Now, keep in mind, I know some of you are like net promoter score, Krista. We've heard about that like in the business sector. How are we using it in the school sector? So in the business sector, it's pretty typical for a business to send out a net promoter survey that just says, hey, how likely are you to recommend our company to a friend or colleague? For school districts, they create this type of survey using something like, how likely are you to recommend our school or school district to a family member, a neighbor, or friend? Families will give a score from 0 to 10, depending on their response. It'll fall into one of these three categories. If they give a 9 to 10, it'll fall in the category of what we call a promoter. A promoter is someone who's really satisfied and likely highly will likely recommend your school or school district to others. 7 to 8, those are those people who are just satisfied, but not satisfied enough to be yet a promoter. I don't know if I'll recommend it yet. I'm still kind of watching it, right? Or they can easily be pulled left or right, right? Or up or down if we're looking at the scale. We call those passives. Those are the ones in the middle. And then 0 to 6 score would put you in a category of they are very dissatisfied, not likely to recommend your school or district to others. We call those detractors. The reason this tool is so powerful is because it gives you insight into the families who you're reaching out to at your district and whether or not they fall in one of those categories, right? The detractor, a passive, or a promoter. So now that I've kind of laid that foundation about NPS, this is the perfect time for me to hand this over to Dr. Shoulders to share not only what we learned about the detractor, the passive, and the promoter families from our last report, but the impact, right, that it'll have on the district and maybe some really quick pivots you can do as a district. So turning it over to you, Dr. Shoulders.
Thank you, Krista. So as Krista mentioned, NPS provides you with powerful data about those detractors, passives, and promoters in your district. So first, let's take a look at families who are not only not recommending your district, they may actually be telling their friends about their negative experiences. So these are the detractors. The detractor family feels they need to actively pursue information from the district and are constantly reaching out for the information they need. I'm sure thinking about families that constantly reach out for information, you're already thinking like, oh gosh, I know this family's a detractor for sure. I hear from them every day. In our most recent survey, 24% of detractors reported being dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with the quality of their district's communication. That's 22% more families that are unhappy with district communication than what we saw within the passive and promoter families. It's also likely that they're not recommending your district to others. And they are, in fact, more frequently thinking about leaving your district for other options than other families are. Our survey found for every one promoter family considering other educational options, you actually have 4 detractor families who are thinking about leaving. When asked to give your district a net promoter score, they would give your district a rating between, as Krista said, 0 and 6. And not surprisingly, detractor families have little to no trust in their district. So here are some key behaviors to help you identify detractor families in your district. First, families that contact the district frequently are more likely to be detractors. Families that express frustration about their communications with their school or complain about the lack of information they have are also more likely to be detractors. And lastly, detractor families may reach out about the same issues repeatedly as they have trouble knowing where to go for a solution. Okay, let's go on and meet the passive family. The passive family tends to be satisfied with the quality of communication with their district and contact their district less often than detractors do. In fact, our survey found that 84% felt they received just the right level of communication from their district. The passive family is likely to recommend their district to family and friends and give the district a 7 or 8 on the Net Promoter Score. 3/4 of passive families strongly trust their district, with only 2% reporting that they distrust the district. And here are some key behaviors to help you identify passive families in your district. They're quiet, but are satisfied with the communication they receive from the district. Essentially, they have no reason to reach out because they feel well informed and they're able to easily find the information they need. Lastly, let's meet that promoter family. The promoter family is your district champion and brand advocate. In our survey, 89% felt they received just enough communication from their district, and a whopping 96% were satisfied or very satisfied with the quality of that communication. Even if they don't love everything about your district, they trust that you're doing your best. When they are asked if they would recommend their district to others, they give a 9 or a 10. And while we know external factors can lead any family to have to consider changing school districts, promoter families are 4 times less likely to consider their other educational options than detractor families. And then here are a couple of key behaviors to, again, help you identify promoters in your district. First, you'll hear them speak highly of your district. They're talking about you in a positive way to others and are happy to recommend your district to their friends. They also ask few questions as they can easily find the information that they need. Now, identifying these families as detractors, passives, and promoters is helpful, but our survey actually unearthed some additional data that can be really insightful in how you move more families to be promoters. One of our key findings from this report is the correlation between communication quality and NPS. Now, I know you're looking at a table with like a whole bunch of statements and a whole bunch of numbers. If you take one thing away from this table, let it be this. There are moderate to strong correlations between every statement we asked about communication quality and NPS. For everything from being able to reach the right person, to perceiving information received as helpful, to perceptions of overall customer satisfaction. As NPS score increases by 1 point, that person's scores on communication quality also increase by 1/2 to 3/4 of a point. So if you want more families to recommend your district, working on communication quality is a great place to start. Next, we found that families with higher perceptions of customer satisfaction and communication quality are less likely to consider leaving the district and more likely to recommend the district to others. This strong inverse relationship between NPS and considering leaving the district, partnered with the strong positive relationship between NPS and communication quality, are important. The higher the NPS score, the higher the perceptions of communication quality, and the less likely a family is to consider leaving. Finally, and what we see as the biggest opportunity for school districts, is that detractors are reaching out to their district more often than passives or promoters. That means most days you're talking to more detractors, so you naturally have more opportunities to change their mind about your district. While those interactions may not always start off as positive, your staff influences how their experience goes, and that is critical. When we examine communication quality, it's not just about the look and feel of your school's newsletter and what's shared on social media. Communication quality is also about the first person who greets a family or answers a phone and the quality of that interaction. So what does all this mean for your district? You have 2 opportunities here. First, seek to learn more about your families and what they think about the interactions they have with your district. If you're not sure how to collect that data or it seems kind of cumbersome, NPS is one question. It's a great place to start. And second, make sure your frontline staff are equipped with the customer service skills they need to manage interactions effectively. So when families are upset, are they being managed in the right way? If not, even by one staff member, are there actions you can take to better ensure your staff are prepared to turn all contacts into positive ones for your families? Now I'd like to hand it back over to Krista to share where we go from here and how your district can use this data. Krista, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Shoulders. I really do appreciate you giving the attendees today just a deeper insight into this the detractor, passive, and promoter families, especially since this is new to some of us. Just a really great breakdown. NPS is so powerful because it just tells you whether or not your families trust your district. Bottom line, if you don't walk away with anything else, know that. It also tells you how they perceive your communication, right? And how they're talking about your district to others. We are getting such a false narrative right now, and we have a very small group that's talking very loudly to a community and trying to influence some of our passives. So we appreciate NPS for its ability to tell you where to focus your energy at your school district as well. You now know that you have an opportunity to blah, blah, blah. We should do a blooper reel after this. You now know you have an opportunity to identify the detractors in your district, and then begin your own journey to move them from detractors to promoters, keeping your family in your district. So what's next? A, get involved with learning more about NPS. Download the report that we did and read it. We're going to share a copy, and I think Isabella mentioned at the very beginning, of the report and the recording today. So you guys can show them my blooper too when you share this. The webinar will be fully recorded, and the report has all the details we've been talking about. Number two, share what you learned today with a larger member of your team, including your cabinet members. Your district leaders are kind of hearing about this in different conferences that we're all experiencing right now, and some of you are experiencing it as well, but get into as many leaders' hands as possible, because the information, it is game changing. And finally, if you need support and you're like, okay, I like the webinar, I'm just kind of hearing about all this is all new, I need a little bit more help or more information, or would love for you guys to come share this kind of information with a larger team, reach out to us. We'd love to meet with you and discuss how we can help get you started. Before I let you go and finish your salad or go on to your next thing, are there any questions that we could answer for you today that the webinar did not cover? You can use your chat, you can come off mute, just don't want to ignore anyone.
I was wondering, are there any districts that have used this to focus on their special education population of parents?
Oh, interesting. I don't think you're limited to who you offer the NPS. I have a district that uses as a pulse survey in all their departments. I don't think they're excluding SPED, but I could find that out for you. And if you wanted to, I'm going to show a QR code. If you wanted to connect with me directly, I could give you those results. But I know department is kind of, would you recommend our special ed department, right, to a friend or family?
Sure.
And they're kind of changing the questions just a little bit differently. Or would you recommend or share some of the experiences you received? Especially, I know how hard you're working in the special ed department to make those experiences, and the parents that, you know, I feel like we get more dialogues and let's talk from the parents in special ed than most of our other departments, because they are so in tuned and so heavily interacting with our school district. So love to connect with you and just do a little research for you and get that information back. And which school districts offhand, I would say Dallas ISD is one that comes to mind.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Krista, we did have one question come in through the chat. And the question is, how is NPS different from other school surveys?
From other school surveys like school climate. Kate, do you mind coming off mute?
Yeah. And this actually kind of touches on the question about different departments as well. So oftentimes NPS, just a question like an NPS type question, how likely are you to recommend, would be included in other school surveys. We often include that in school climate surveys that we give, or employee engagement surveys that we give. But they're different in that NPS is a pulse. If you're using it on its own, you are using just that question. You can, if you want, add like 1 or 2 additional questions related to the type of family. So that might be where you say, like, do you have a child that is that has an IEP or that has a 504, so that you can then disaggregate the data for like NPS related to parents that have children enrolled in the special education department, or parents that have children, that are receiving free and reduced lunch, different things like that. So you can disaggregate data that way, depending on what you collect. Our surveys that are other, there are other school surveys, school climate, employee engagement, satisfaction. These are all designed to be given once, maybe twice a year, just because of their length. So they're not so much of a pulse as they are collecting like a benchmark of the year to compare to other years. NPS, you can, just the pulse question, you can give that, at the end. You have sometimes, like you hear them on the phone if you call a credit card company or something, where they say like, hang on for a brief survey and they'll ask you one question, right? That is what NPS can be used for. You can use NPS as frequently as every interaction, or every month send out a newsletter to your family. So this is designed to be used more frequently, to give you more frequent feedback on your families. It's not designed to replace those other surveys, but rather give you data between survey administrations.
Thank you. Any other questions? Perfect. I'd like to finish by thanking our partners at AXA for helping to make this webinar happen. And just for your convenience, just like I shared before, we have a QR code if it's easy to just put your phone right in front of it as a reminder, or you can take a screenshot of this as well to connect with Dr. Shoulders. As a reminder, you're going to get a copy of this recording and the report to share with your colleagues. Thank you so much for attending today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Yeah, again, thank you, everyone. We'll send you an email when we have that recording out. Thank you, Kate, Kristen, as well. We appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.